Morning Men and Warriors, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kate Hartley and I share a video with you every Monday about something related to menopause. I get questions so much around menopause weight gain, and I thought today I'm actually going to break it down into the science of why you might be gaining weight, because the calories in versus calories out equation is just super simplistic and it does not make sense. And I think when you can understand the root cause of what might be causing the weight gain, then you can have faith and confidence in going forward, making the changes that you might want to make. So I'm going to go over a little bit of a historical perspective because it's important for you to understand where it all went wrong. Not going to spend too long on history, but you need to see why it's the issue that it is these days, why we're now in this obesity epidemic. And then we're going to go more into hormones and help you understand what roles our hormones are playing in contributing to your possible fat gain. I created some slides to help you understand that I'm a visual learner, and when we talk about hormones, I don't know about you, when I was like going into perimenopause, it's just like people start to talk about hormones, you're just like I don't know, you're talking to me like it's sort of Pythagoras. It is not as difficult as you might think it is, and when you can understand exactly why you are getting the results that you're getting, then you can take action to correct that if you need to. I'm also going to be referring a lot to carbs. On the whole, we're talking about refined carbs, but I will go into that in more detail through the webinar. I hope that by the end of this, you're going to have a really good grasp of what's going wrong. And when we go into menopause and our hormones are all over the shop, as estrogen levels fall, naturally our cortisol levels rise. Our adrenal glands back up the job of the ovaries. So when the ovaries go into retirement, they're no longer creating eggs. Our adrenals do that job to help release estrogen into the body. When you are going through serious symptoms, it's highly likely that it's your adrenal health that is making your symptoms worse. You could almost go so far as to say that if your adrenal health is in really good order, so you manage your stress effectively, you do the things that you're supposed to be doing, like taking regular exercise, getting out into nature, enough vitamin D on your skin, feeding your body with what it needs, your symptoms really should be pretty much zero. When your adrenal health is not great, and in the cases of so many of us it's not, because we live stressful lives these days, and even if you live a relatively stress-free life, you're still being bombarded by chemicals and pesticides and hormones from animal produce out there, and that also has a stressful impact on your body. So stress management is a massive player when it comes to managing your menopause symptoms. But just taking it back to the cortisol, so one of your major stress hormones, as cortisol rises, so does insulin, which is our fat storing hormone in the body. Insulin is largely responsible for you gaining the fat. And that is what we're going to be diving into in much greater detail throughout the course of this presentation. And by the way, if you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss future episodes. So today I'm talking about how is it that we get fat. And we need to know this because it can increase our cancer risk, our heart problems, it can lead to diabetes too. It can also significantly impact your menopausal symptoms. And what causes us to gain weight? We don't really ask ourselves this much that often because we just believe the calories in versus calories out equation. That is what I refer to as the general screw up. It's not as simplistic as that. Unfortunately, just so many medical institutions and weight loss programs rely upon the calories in versus calories out equation. When you look at the further details of it, it just doesn't make sense. So to talk about firstly, the paradox of obesity. Compare society in nowadays to the 70s. There's been a huge change. The average person has gained a lot of weight. I grew up in the 70s. People didn't really think about diets or exercising then. There was not a diet culture. There wasn't a sort of, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. There weren't food labels. And most people were a relatively healthy weight. Of course, there were going to be a few people that were overweight in the sort of 60s and 70s, but considerably fewer than there are these days. And if we want to understand how to lose weight, we need to know why we gained the weight in the first place. Why is this happening? And where did it all go wrong? If we go back in time a bit, we can look at what people used to think about weight gain. This is Dr. William Osler, the father of modern medicine. In his 1882 book, Obesity and Its Treatment, he said you should treat obesity with a diet full of beef, veal, mutton, and eggs. Fatty foods and protein are crucial for weight loss because they keep you fuller. In 1920, the Reader's Digest suggested there were certain foods which caused you to gain weight, like refined carbs, and certain foods to help you lose weight, like meat, greens, and fruits. It says, the stout person must learn that he has both friends and enemies at the table. His enemies are sugar, bread, cereals, desserts. Among his friends are lean meats, unsweetened fruits, and green foods. That is the standard that I take as far as my nutrition goes as well. Note about the refined carbs. So in a large instance here, we are talking about the processed foods. So the cakes, the cookies, the sugars, the sweets. The 1950s endocrinology, I can never say that word, endocrinology book said to avoid refined carbs and eat foods as much as you like of the meat, fish, birds, veggies, eggs, cheese, fruit category. So it was still suggesting then that eating natural and processed whole foods was the healthy way forward. The other change that happened is how often we're eating. So in 1977, a survey suggested we eat 3 times a day. In 2003, we were eating nearly all day long. Meal, snack, meal, snack, meal, snacks, meal, snack. In 2015, the slimmest people were eating 3 times a day, and the people on the fatter end of the spectrum were eating up to 10 times a day, which meant that they're eating over a longer period of time. In the 1970s, obesity treatment was eat more foods that don't make you fat and eat fewer foods that make you fat and don't eat all the time. And this pretty much worked. It was really simple. So what changed? In the 1970s, there was a huge peak in the rates of heart disease. And remember, in the 1950s and 60s and 70s to a degree, it was really fashionable to smoke cigarettes. But they did not draw that correlation, they as in the sort of medical institutions, the governments, because obviously there's quite a lot of money to be made from the cigarettes, as there are medical pills and potions. In a lot of instances, we are being fashioned to not have responsibility for our own lives. And that is just so wrong, because we all have so much more power than we think we do. And yes, sometimes it takes a little bit of your own research, particularly when you're fighting against the pop this pill and don't read the side effects. In some instances you have to, but there are a lot of instances when you don't have to. And that is what I really want you to understand, is that through feeding your body the right food, it's not just about the calories in, calories out. It's about the chemical reactions that get set off in your body when you eat food that serves you and when you eat food that does not serve you. At that time, we did not know about the dangers of smoking. So they automatically thought, oh, must be the diet that's going wrong. You know, we're eating saturated fat, we're eating meat. Surely that's making us die of heart disease. And during the 1970s, the rates of heart disease peaked by around about 3-fold. So it was a sharp, sharp rise. And it was just like, well, what the heck is going on here? But it didn't really make sense, the saturated fat argument, because people had always been eating saturated fat. But it was only recently in the 70s when the rates of heart disease significantly increased. So what was it? And then there's something called the French paradox, because the French love their creams, their butters, their foie gras, but they had a third of the level of heart disease cases that we were experiencing in the UK and the US. So why was that? Well, actually, the French paradox was ultimately turned on its head, but we cannot dismiss it completely, because particularly as you move further south in France, they eat the Mediterranean diet, lots of vegetables, healthy fats, oils, and red wine. And these chemicals in these foods, there's a lot of studies done, and these are polyphenols. Resveratrol, which is found in red wine and grapes. In nature, resveratrol is a protective compound that protects the plants from bacteria, insects, fungal infections, the ultraviolet, etc. And we've seen how it can have a beneficial impact on humans as well. And in 2017, there was a big study called the PURE study, which looked at over 135,000 people in 18 countries across a 7-year time period. And it proved that eating saturated fats was not contributing to heart disease. And as we know now, it was the higher levels of smoking that increased the rates of heart disease. But in 1997, there were specific guidelines for nutrition which were drilled into professionals, school children, etc. And this represented a massive change in the dietary habits of Americans for the first time. I'm using the American story here right at the moment because they sort of beat us to it, but in the UK right now, and in probably most of Western Europe, we are all struggling with the same problem. So this represented a huge change in dietary habits, and for the first time in history, the government told the population what to eat. And before then, we were told to eat what our mothers told us to eat, and our mothers were taught by probably their mother. And what they said is to eat lots of carbs. So 55 to 60% of your diet should be carbs, and to eat less fat, which translated into a food pyramid, which came in the 1980s. And as you can see at the top of the pyramid, to eat meat once a month, which is just like nuts, unless of course you're vegetarian or veggie or vegan. Weekly was eggs, fish or chicken, sweet desserts. I'm coming on to a slide that is just going to blow your mind. And daily cheese, yogurt, olive oil, all of these. And a lot of these are good for you. You know, you want your fruits, your vegetables, your olive oil, your cheese and yogurt, they're not going to do you any harm. But the main thing you need to be looking at is we were being told to eat way more of the refined carbs and not refined carbs that actually are going to be causing you the damage. And so get this is an eating plan for healthy Americans, put together by the American Heart Association. This was their diet as they recommended it in 1995. It says not only should you snack, you should choose snacks from other food groups such as low-fat cookies, low-fat crackers, unsalted pretzels, hard candy, gumdrops, sugar, just literally sugar, syrup, honey, jam, jelly, marmalade, spreads. I mean, really? They said that pure sugar was good for your heart. Can you just imagine this? Eating sugar because it's low in fat. It was just such a terrible idea, but we were being told to eat this stuff. As a result of this, people ate more grains and they ate more sugar because the government said to. The doctors said to. The Heart Association said we needed to. Eat more carbs, eat less protein and healthy fats. So what happened? The obesity was rising very slowly until the mid-1970s. And then after the dietary guidelines, it spiked. And that continues to this day. And that is probably the result of what we've been covering so far. Eating more carbs led to an obesity epidemic. And the official explanation was that you're eating too much fat and calories. Nothing about cutting down on your carbs like your grandmother would have told you to do, and stop snacking the sweet things. We didn't choose to eat more carbs. We were told to eat more carbs. It was official dogma. It was what they were telling us to do. And as the obesity epidemic went on, it became harder to explain it. This is why you need to understand the historical context of all this. And because carbs had been called good, they couldn't also be called bad too, because they gave you obesity. And this is when they switched the energy paradigm. This is when the calories in versus calories out BS started. They switched the energy equation. So essentially, broccoli, they were saying, is as fattening as sugar, so long as it's the same number of calories. So it completely ignores the fact that if you eat 1,000 calories of broccoli, you're going to be stuffed. And it's full of healthy things that are going to help your body do what it needs to do. If you drink 1,000 calories of soda, you're not going to be full at all. There's absolutely no nutrition in it. And it's probably going to spike you to want to eat even more sugary stuff afterwards, because it's going to send your chemicals in your body into overdrive. That you're doing yourself so much harm. So the 1,000 calories of broccoli versus the 1,000 calories of soda, you cannot compare them. It completely ignores physiology and says it's all about calories. And the sudden obesity was not due to the sudden drastic change, this is what they were saying, in the low-fat diet and eating refined carbs, because they can't be good and bad at the same time. So therefore, since fat, as they said, was bad, that had to be the cause for obesity, despite in the past it showed that the opposite was true. So calories in versus calories out has been the religion over the last 50 years or so. The solution was simply to eat fewer calories and move more. And the problem is, this is the very circular logic. If people are gaining weight, it suggests people are eating too many calories. And also, how do you know if it's too many? It gets you locked in this stupid loop. How many is too many? In the 1900s, people were eating 3,000 calories a day. And what are your goals? For me, if I wanted to lose weight, I would be told to eat around 1,500 calories a day. But if I want to build muscle, I'm recommended to eat over 2,000 calories a day. So, what is the right amount for you? We are all completely individual. We all have different metabolic turnovers. So to even say this is what you should be eating as, as a daily amount, it doesn't take into your height, your sex. It's just crazy. And so now obesity then became this gluttony and sloth problem. The medical authorities, because of course they can't blame themselves, because then that means that they would be wrong because they wrote the rules, they started to blame you. They suggested it was a mental problem. You're lazy, you're greedy, you have no willpower. They were saying, don't blame us, blame you. And we know that cutting calories does not work. And it can lead to fat shaming, implying some kind of psychological defect. We just know that does not work. The other way to look at obesity is not about the number of calories, but what the body does with these calories. And this is where I want you to, if you've fallen asleep, please wake up and start to take note, because this is the bit that you really need to understand. You have calories coming in from food. So this is your food. And this makes the body release insulin. Your body has a decision to make at this point, Mr. Decision Man. You can either burn it or you can store it. If you burn it, you will increase your metabolic rate. If you store it, it gets stored as fat and also as sugar. That is just what insulin does. However, when insulin levels are much higher than normal, you push those calories more towards storage. So whatever calories you're eating, you can even get fat on really healthy stuff if you eat too much of it. Your body only needs a certain amount of certain foods. When your insulin levels are much higher than normal, you push those calories more towards storage. And this is the very important bit. You're telling your body to store more fat and you're not burning it for energy. And as you're storing the calories of fat, and you don't have a lot of energy to burn because it's locked in, your body thinks it needs to go and find more calories. The problem is that you have a hormonal issue where your insulin levels are too high, driving you into storing fat, which leaves you with no immediate energy to burn, which then makes you go out and eat more calories. So yes, you are eating more than you need to, but it's the insulin making you do this. And now you know that you can make changes. So I really hope that helps you to understand the role of insulin and eating foods that are going to spike your insulin more highly. Because if you're storing your fat or storing the energy as fat, you can't also access it to burn the energy. So high insulin over a long period of time leads to this weight gain because it encourages you to go and eat, because you're not getting the energy from the cells that is stored because it's locked away because of the high levels of insulin. Insulin is your fat storing hormone. We need insulin. It's really, really important, but we need insulin in the right amounts. And since we've been encouraged to eat more carbs and our foods are laced with hidden sugars, which are also carbs, refined carbs, that is consistently spiking your insulin. We know that if you inject insulin into a patient, they will gain weight. In the olden days, those people that had diabetes 1, where they don't make their own insulin, and very sadly, before we understood the role of insulin, they died. They would just continue to lose weight and lose weight and lose weight, and eventually they died. So we know that by not having insulin, you lose weight. By having more insulin than you need, you store fat. So the problem is the high levels of insulin, and what causes the high levels? It's what you eat. Carbs of any type, refined carbs will spike your insulin much higher, but carbs of any type will spike your insulin. Fat has the lowest effect on your insulin levels, and protein does make your insulin rise a little bit, but nothing like the amount of carb that carbs do. And then of course you have your refined carbs. Now it's also important to understand that vegetables and fruits fall under the carbs banner when we're talking about macronutrients. So vegetables and fruits are obviously very, very good for you. People do say to not eat too many bananas, not eat too many grapes, not eat too many mangoes, because they are fruits that are higher in sugar. But if the decision is between a biscuit or a banana, eat the banana. Fruit is very, very good for you. The berries are probably the top of the scale as far as nutritional density goes. But I mean, I eat half a small banana literally every single day of my life, and I don't have an obesity problem. It's putting it into context and also being a little bit commonsensical about this. But just know that carbs will spike your insulin levels. If you're eating all the time, which is what has happened more since the 1970s, you're grazing more and more and more, then your insulin is being spiked more and more and more. So if you eat once a day, your insulin goes up once a day. If you eat 6 times a day, your insulin rises 6 times a day. But in the 70s, they were eating fewer carbs and they were eating less frequently. In the 2000s, they were cutting the fats, eating more carbs, eating sugar-laden foods. Can you remember the Special K advert that always said, oh, yes, eat Special K, it'll help you lose weight? That's such a load of baloney. It was full of high refined carbs. It had exactly the opposite response to your body. So in the 2000s, they were cutting fat and eating more carbs and eating more frequently. More carbs and grazing leads to weight gain. So the healthy fat loss principles, calories in versus calories out. If you follow that very simplistic approach, which a lot of weight loss places suggest you do, it's not long-term sustainable. This is why when you restrict your calories over a shorter period of time, you are likely to lose weight. People will say to me, oh, but I followed one of those procedures and it worked for me. But did you keep it off? Are you still years down the line managing to maintain a healthy weight without having to go through your counting your calories? And what is your health like overall? And what are your menopause symptoms like overall? What is your bone density looking like? What's your skin looking like? What's your muscle mass looking like? It's not as simple as being slim or skinny and fat. And we need to have lean muscle. We need to have strong bones. We need to have strong connective tissue. So, for instance, going to the refined sugars, calories in versus calories out, you might have had enough calories left at the end of your day to say, oh, I don't feel like any proper food. I've left it a bit late. I'm just going to have some ice cream because I know that falls within my calories bracket for the day. Your grandmother would think you're insane. You are going to send your insulin levels are just going in crazy mode. She would have told you to stop being so stupid, to eat your meat, eat your vegetables, and have some fruit. She'd have said, go and eat an apple if you want something sweet. And also, you want to reduce your refined carbohydrates. So just talking about carbs, because like I said, the fruits and veggies fall under the carbs banner. Refined carbohydrates are your white bread, your white pasta, your white rice, your cakes, your cookies, your pretzels, those sorts of things, your crisps. Those are refined carbohydrates. People always say, what about potatoes? Potatoes do spike your insulin more than something like a pound of broccoli would do. They do contain more sugar. But again, potatoes are not that bad for you. I eat lots of potatoes. I also eat sweet potatoes. I eat turnip or rutabaga. I eat swede. I eat carrots. Just be aware that there's lots of other starchy vegetable alternatives that you can use instead of the white potato if you're really looking to significantly reduce your insulin spikes. But eating whole and processed food is the best way forward. You are going to be nutritionally dense that way. And when you're eating whole and processed foods, your body's got what it needs. Don't be afraid to eat fat and protein. Saturated fat is not bad for you. We've been eating animal fat for 2,000 years before we started getting fat. It's also important to know that cholesterol, there's so much bad press written about cholesterol. Cholesterol is the precursor for all your hormones. So while your hormones are going crazy through perimenopause, the worst thing that you can do is go on a low-fat diet. You need healthy fats. You need cholesterol in your body. When you eat whole unprocessed foods and you eat a wide range of macros, so you've got your healthy fats, you've got your lean protein, you've got your carbs, including your vegetables and your fruits, your cholesterol really should not be a problem. Eat with breaks between your meals. And you might say, oh, that's fasting, isn't it? Isn't that intermittent fasting? It can be. Fasting is any time when you're not eating. It gives your body a break from eating. It allows the body to turn off the excess sugar and fat naturally. So it really is any time that you're not putting food in your mouth. However, fasting can be really, really beneficial. And if you've got type 2 diabetes, I would highly, highly recommend it. Do something like the 16-8 rule. It means you don't eat through a 16-hour window, and then you do eat through an 8-hour window. It's what I used to follow in actual fact, and I absolutely love it because I don't like eating earlier in the day. However, since I've been really focusing on my strength training, I'm menopausal, I don't really struggle with belly fat too much because I follow these principles. However, I do know that if I'm drinking more wine than I should, I get more fluff around my belly. And when I'm not eating, I've just recently started eating a protein-packed pre-workout meal to make sure that I'm really getting the maximum gains from my strength training workouts. And since then, I've got leaner, my muscle definition has improved. I feel incredible. I've always had a lot of energy because I eat well for energy, but I feel even better these days, and that is just by eating a protein-rich meal before my workout, which I do in the morning. So that's sort of messed up my 16-8 intermittent fasting. I also work with a lot of ladies who used to intermittent fast. It used to work really well for them, and it doesn't anymore. And the reason for that is because your body might be needing food earlier in the day. If you're feeling physically hungry, you don't want to put your body into stress. The cortisol is what you want to keep managed at a low level, because like I said earlier, it spikes your insulin levels. So cortisol is your stress hormone. Any kind of hunger or dehydration is stress. Not eating well enough is stress. So it's so important that you do understand that stress comes in so many different guises. It's not like just a deadline at work. It's not just walking down a dark alley at night. It really is what you're feeding your body and drinking as well. Is that causing stress in your body, or is it helping you live a healthy life? So do make sure that you're not continually grazing. If you're feeling hungry after a meal, eat a bit more. And the way to do it is add an extra portion of veggies to your plate, first of all. If you're still feeling hungry after that, then add yet more protein to your plate, lean, healthy protein, because that also contains healthy fats. And protein and healthy fats keep you feeling fuller for longer. Plus, we need them. Fats are incredibly important for our entire body, our nervous system, our hormones. Protein is the building blocks of life. We need protein and healthy fats. Gut health is incredibly important. There's more and more research being done into gut health. And if you have a poor balance of the healthy and the not so healthy, or the bad bacteria in your gut, you're going to struggle to lose weight. There's even things called a capsule, which can implant the healthy gut bacteria from a healthy individual into somebody who's struggling with obesity. And miraculously, it helps them to lose weight. So gut health is really, really important. Every day I eat pre and probiotics and digestive enzymes. I also have adaptogen herbs that help me manage my stress levels more effectively. That superfood shake also contains protein and fiber, because a lot of what we eat is, even though it's healthy food, because our soil is not so healthy as it used to be, because we use so many fertilizers and pesticides, we overwork our land. The food that we're eating is not as nutritionally dense as it used to be. You know, if you eat meat or fish, it's likely got hormones in it. It's likely got heavy metals in it. We've got heavy metals in it that we absorb from the atmosphere. So we need to be doing everything that we can to improve our gut health, and also it brings me on to reducing your toxic load. But there is so much out there that we can be bombarded with on a daily level. And when we're aware of that, it really makes it even more important to focus on what we are putting into our bodies. If you can grow your own at home, that is by far the best stuff, because you know that how you've treated it, and it's probably got much better quality soil than you might be getting from some mass farmed produced goods. Fermented foods are incredibly important too for your gut health. I brew my own kombucha, and things like sauerkraut, kimchi, kefir, these are up here. These fermented foods are really, really important for you too. Intentional movement, I will always say, if you're getting older, you have to strength train. If you're young, still strength train, but as you're getting older, it becomes even more important, because we go through the menopause, our bone density and our muscle mass declines very fast, and we need to keep it strong. So you have to do strength training if you want to have a healthy second half of your life. Plus, the more muscles that you have, they directly suck glucose, the sugar, out of your bloodstream. So if you've not got so much sugar floating around in your bloodstream, It means that you don't need so much insulin to deal with the glucose in your bloodstream. So muscles, as well as making you look and feel a lot healthier, they've got a direct impact on lowering your insulin levels, which is what you want. So again, if you're diabetic too, if you're pre-diabetes, if you're struggling with weight gain, please start working on your strength training. If you want any help with that, take a look at the description below this video, get your Sparkle Back form, fill that in. It'll give you a good idea of your struggles, what your goals are, and can advise you best as what I would suggest you start with. And reducing your toxic load, that's really important. There's something called obesogens, which are hormone disruptors. And they are hormones that we get from food. Because like if we're eating beef, for instance, the beef may have been injected with hormones. The food that they're given may be laden with pesticides. That might also have growth hormones. We have genetically modified food these days. And so, for instance, if you have a receptor, your own hormone receptor is available in your body for it to be plugged by one of your hormones, but you have some cattle hormone that pops in, well, then that means your hormone receptor has been plugged by the cow's hormone. You don't want that. You want it plugging with your hormones. That it really does mess up your hormonal balance. There's obesogens in makeup, in plastics, in soap, and also going non-toxic in your household. You can spend an awful lot on healthy, non-toxic products that are marketed online, or you could just get yourself a big tub of white vinegar and mix in some soda crystals, make it into like a runny paste. Just use that with a cloth or a sponge and it cleans really, really well. And you can even make your own laundry detergent. There's so much that you can do. I always make my own, and it's kind to the environment, it's kinder to me, it means there's no toxic stuff coming off it. So just be mindful that you do need to try and reduce your toxic load as much as possible. So with feeding, you put energy into your body, known as calories, and that activates insulin. And there's the decision that needs to be made. It's either going to be stored as body fat or sugar, or you're going to burn some of it, whether that's your metabolic basal level, that's just the sort of turnover of your body, your cellular renewal, your brain, etc., or you're using it through exercise. But very importantly, when insulin is activated, which is always is when you eat something, you cannot take the energy that is stored to burn it. It just does not happen. So insulin inhibits lipolysis, which means that insulin blocks fat burning. So when insulin's high, you've got the energy coming in and your body's wanting to store the energy. You cannot take the energy out of storage. You cannot take sugar out of storage. You cannot take the fat out of storage and burn it because the insulin is preventing that. It is only when the insulin goes down that you can now take the energy that is stored in your cells. And it makes sense because when you think of it, you've got food coming in. You don't want the body to have to burn the energy that's in your storage already. You might as well use the sugar and the fats that's coming in. So that's why having gaps between your meals is important to let your insulin levels settle down enough. Make sure that you're feeling full enough after a meal. For instance, like spaghetti bolognese, we get our proportions all wrong, our macronutrients all wrong. Most people, particularly in the UK, the US, probably not so much in Italy, but we have a massive, massive bowl of pasta. And then we have some bolognese on top. That is completely the wrong way around. We need a fraction of the pasta that we're eating, and we need more of the meat and the veggies. So after you eat, your insulin goes up for a couple of hours. After a larger meal, the food gets broken down slowly. If you've had a really large meal, it can take 4, 6, 8 hours to process fully. And just to be aware that refined foods will make your insulin spike faster and over a longer period of time. Once it starts to fall, that's when you see the switch from using the energy you had in the food to the energy that you have stored away. So insulin goes up. Then after your next meal, if it's not had a chance to go back down yet, it will go even higher and higher and higher. So if you're eating, say, 8 times a day, your insulin goes up after your first meal, and then it starts to go down naturally. But then, oh God, you've eaten again. So insulin goes up again. So it's got a higher starting point. Then you have your meal 2, and it just starts to drop a little, but it's probably not even dropped beneath where it was after your meal 1. And then you eat meal 3, and it's gone up again. So can you see at the end of the day, your insulin's going up and up and up and up and up, and it's never getting a chance to come down effectively, which is why if you're struggling with insulin resistance, which is not what you want, Fasting is a really great idea to sort of help you regulate your insulin levels, so you've got a good base starting point again. Also, avoid eating too late, because that's one of the biggest ways you can cut your fasting period. Ideally, you want to be 14 hours every single day without even thinking about it. And if you want to use it actively to lose weight, I would do the 16 hours off, 8 hours eating window. And then just avoid overeating once you start to eat after a fasting period, because otherwise you're just undoing all the benefits of what you've just achieved. This is the difference between the calories in, calories out equation versus understanding that it's actually a hormonal problem. When your insulin levels are too high, you can't actually get rid of the fat, because the fat is locked in your cells because of the insulin being too high. It's not letting you gain access to those cells to release the fat. And then when your insulin levels are at a healthy level, which they should be at, then your body will release the fat. You know, in a normal functioning human being, insulin works behind the scenes and is not an issue. But because we consistently eat too many carbs and refined carbs, taking the spag bol recipe idea as an example, we think that's how we should eat our food. It's not. You really need to be prioritizing your healthy fats, your lean protein, and your veggies. And carbs should be a small fraction of what you're eating. We do not need them. We need carbs for energy. Carbs are really, really healthy, but the refined carbs is where it's all gone wrong. There are men and women in little white coats in labs designing our food to be addictive. And it keeps you coming back for more, but it also, because it's spiking your insulin, it's making you unable to release fat, but it's also making you still hungry, because the energy that you have stored in your cells, you can't actually get at anyway. So it's really important to understand that healthy fats, including saturated fats and lean protein and lots of vegetables and fruit, are your best friends. Just eat like our early ancestors used to. Also, I can't help but think that the hybridization of our food, the genetic modification of our food, the chemicals, the pesticides, the fertilizers that are being used to mass produce our food these days must also have a contributory factor to the weight gain. And also remember that a lot of processed foods and a lot of healthy fats in the supermarket, known as vegetable fats, they're not vegetable fats. They don't come from crushing broccoli or cauliflower. They come from seeds. And the way the seeds are processed, they're often under high pressure. They sometimes use chemicals to get the oils out of, which can leave a residue in the oil as well. But they've oxidized already by the time they even get to your plate. Oxidization is not good. It increases free radicals, which increase free inflammation in your body, can contribute to cancer and heart disease. Vegetable oils, just avoid them if you can do. Extra virgin olive oil is a great one. Coconut oil, avocado oil, butter. You know, back in the day, I remember my mother, my grandmother, they all cooked in lard. They weren't fat. They didn't have heart problems. Just eat normal butter. Margarine, it's just like, why was that stuff even made? If you eat margarine, one of the best things that you can do is eat butter instead of margarine. Yes, it's more saturated fat, but it doesn't contain the trans fats and the vegetable oils that increase inflammation in your body no end. We've all been doctored into thinking we need to have a spreadable, easy. It's rubbish. It's rubbish in a pot. You'd be much better off having butter on your toast. I do not touch margarine with a barge pole. I eat French butter, and I cook with olive oil or coconut oil or butter. And also remember, in the 70s, I mean, we were all out in fields. We were climbing trees. We were just like, we were out, we played. And people don't do that anymore. Either kids are stuck doing hours of homework, or they're stuck on their games. You know, adults are, I am. I spend so much time indoors looking at my computer screen, but I do make sure to get out into nature. I'm very active in my garden. I do strength training pretty much every day. So I'm active in that way. I've got dogs, so I have to walk those as well. But I'm far more sedentary than I'd like to be in an ideal world. And that is for somebody who works from home, and my business is around keeping healthy and fit. For people who are required to be in the office, or they have to leave at 5 a.m, 4:30 a.m. to get into the city to then do their job, where they don't actually get home until 9 p.m. at night, that is not a healthy way of living. If you get a chance to get out onto your balcony at lunchtime, if you have like a sun terrace at work, get out there, get some sun on you, or just get some daylight on your skin. If they have a gym at work, get into the gym. Just do half an hour of really intense activity. It will make your afternoon and your evening so much more productive. But there are ways when you're in that predicament, you have to be the best proponent for yourself. You have to be the one that says, okay, right, well, this is a sticky situation. It's not good for my health. Either you change it or you adapt what you can. I know there's a lady in my group at the moment. She gets up at 4:30 every day to get her workout done before her day kicks off. That's what I used to have to do in the olden days as well. I'd be up at 4:30, get half an hour of workout done, and then my day would start. And yes, it does sound early, but it gives you energy. It was one of the best things I ever did. And it was a really great discipline as well. I just made sure to go to bed earlier at night. So there are things that we can do. But when you understand that insulin equation and you understand that muscle mass can significantly positively impact your fat burning capabilities, estrogen falls, cortisol rises, and insulin rises. So we're already struggling with this battle in menopause. So manage your stress as much as you can. Be more active. If you're at the supermarket, just park at the far end of the car park. Even little things like that make a big difference. Everybody like crams to get around nearest to the door. Just go park away. So you actually have to walk to the supermarket a little bit, and use the stairs instead of the lift. There are simple things that we can do to make our lives considerably better. And it's amazing, those small little incremental steps throughout the day combined make a big difference. Avoid too much bread. Carbs, like I said, are good for us, but in a small amount. We don't need an awful lot of carbs. And I'm not anti-carbs at all. They're an essential part of the diet, of a healthy diet. Just make sure you're eating healthy carbs and that you're not eating a massive bowl of pasta or a massive bowl of rice when you eat it. Sandwich alternatives. The other day I sliced some sweet potato, put it in a little bit of olive oil, put it in the air fryer and use that as toast or bread instead. Got it out, I fried it for about 6 minutes, then got it out, got some cottage cheese on top, sliced some tomatoes on a couple of pieces, and then put blueberries on the other 2 pieces, put it back in the air fryer for another 6 minutes. It was absolutely delicious. It kept me full for so long, and it was full of really healthy nutrients rather than a sandwich. It wouldn't have been quite so healthy. So it's about just small little things that you can do to make a big difference. Use a bell pepper as a sandwich instead. You can fill it with tuna, Greek yogurt, a little bit of horseradish sauce, some lemon juice, some chives or spring onions, some little bits of chunks of celery. Use some herbs in it. Bung that in a bell pepper, crush it all together, and you've got the crunchiest, most mouth-watering, delicious meal that will keep you fuller for longer than bread would. And plus, it's not going to have that high insulin spike. Even healthy bread is going to spike your insulin more than a vegetable alternative would do. And it's not about just being completely dogmatic and changing it all and thinking, oh my God, I can never touch bread, I can never eat potatoes again. Of course you can. So it's not about living this really strict life. It's just about adopting a few principles that ultimately are going to help you manage your insulin levels more effectively and reverse the weight gain if you're really struggling to get rid of it. And please, if you know of anybody who's struggling with their weight or if they're obese, there is no shaming about it. Food is made to be addictive. We are given the wrong messages. When the scientists, the food scientists, or the people in the little white coats realize that we've caught onto like high fructose corn syrup, if you ever see that on a label, just put it back on the shelf. It's in so many salad dressings, ketchups and things, mayonnaises. I always make my own, except for ketchup. I have the low sugar, low salt, but I eat ketchup maybe once every 2 months. I really don't touch that kind of stuff. High fructose corn syrup is one of the worst things you can eat because of insulin spikes. It pulls calcium out of your bones. It's just a really baddie. But now we've caught onto that. They've named it something else, and they'll keep renaming things as the population becomes more aware. And, oh, I shouldn't be eating that. They'll rename it something else. So it's a really hard battle to fight. Keep it simple. Manage your stress. Eat whole foods. Cook from home. Reduce or eradicate processed foods. And if it says healthy on the packet, don't believe it. Because a healthy, even if it says like couscous and mushrooms and whatever else it might have in it that just sounds delicious, have a look on the label. Are there things on that label that you cannot pronounce? If there are, stick it back on the shelf, because I promise you it will have things on there that you cannot pronounce. Bring some couscous home. Bring some mushrooms home, some onions, some garlic, olive oil or coconut oil. mix it all up together and you will have a delicious meal without all this stuff that's going to set off negative chemical reactions in your body and also spike your insulin levels. You want healthy fats. It's the sugars that are the problem. It's the refined carbs that are the problem. Eat less of those or eradicate them. Lean protein, lean fats, lots of vegetables and fruit. That is the way to go. I hope this was helpful. If there's anything that you would like me to cover in a future episode, please send me a comment or leave a comment below. And thank you for your company this week. And I look forward to chatting with you again next week.